Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 168.
But Titan Ranch, at least for the purposes of what we're talking about here, Keith, is really, I thought about turning it into a training facility. As a former trainer, I did training for 6-7 years in Wi-Fi. I thought, hey, it'd be a cool place to hold training classes. And then through more thought, it's like, well, what about a training experience? So not only are you holding training in a missile silo, which is kind of cool in itself, both literally and figuratively, but it's also to do things that people don't normally get to do.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Welcome to Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast. My name is Keith Parsons, and I'm here today with GT Hill. GT, how are you doing?
Good, sir. Thanks for having me.
Well, we happen to be sitting at level 3 in a rebuilt Titan missile silo. What's the nearest town near here?
Closest one is Conway.
Conway in Arkansas. Anyway, this is your facility, and I'm sure if anyone's been listening to in the Wi-Fi world for any length of time, they've heard you talk about your missile silo. We're here in your missile silo right now. So I thought we could use this as a chance to have a podcast to explain kind of what is Titan Ranch, what are your plans for it, and kind of how did you get here. So are you good with that?
It's great. Yeah,
great.
Appreciate it.
Well, first of all, why did you buy a missile silo?
Oh, my goodness. That's the eternal question. I bought it mainly because it's pretty awesome. It's kind of like a modern archaeology. You know, you're not digging for Egyptians, but you're digging for something that was buried a long time ago. And I just always found it neat. But it's also, I don't know, you probably don't have the same feelings I do down here, but to me it's safe, right? I mean, you kind of have this feeling that you're protected from whatever, nothing that's bad happening now. But there's kind of a safety thing to it. You get to close those 6,000-pound doors, and if there's lightning and thunder and a tornado, you don't even hear it. So it's just kind of a combination of a bunch of things.
And if you had more than just snacks down here, you could live for a while.
That is true. You could probably live I could live down here for 2 months, but that's self-storage.
Yeah, that's good. Anyway, I think it has more technology built into the silo than most people think of. Last year, I guess it was 2018, still this year, after WLPC, you took a group of people down to a missile silo in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that like?
Oh, well, it was a great time for me because I got to, go back to the Titan Missile Museum in Arizona again, which was just a ton of fun. It was really good for me to be able to share it with everybody. But yeah, originally there was definitely a bunch of technology. In fact, the room we're in right now was the communication room. In fact, Keith, if you look right behind you, there are those holes in the wall that you see. The one that you can see actually goes to what's called a SLIFX antenna, which is a super low frequency receiver-only antenna that was super into the world. Like, nuclear weapon had already gone off. All the antennas topside were blown up. That was the last means of one-way communication, receiver-only. That would actually be a fun thing to do. We could dig up that antenna. It's actually still here. It's pretty neat looking.
What specific frequency? That was like, we're going to send you a signal to launch.
Correct. And it's, I actually don't, I should know the frequencies for that, but it's super low frequency. The transmitter for it, don't quote me on this, I believe was in Michigan, and it was 18 miles long. So for those of you out there that
that's
understand,
a big waveform.
That's a big wave. And that's why this is receive only, because it doesn't have, you have to, your wavelength for building your antenna, even at a quarter wavelength, has to be huge. So super low frequency receiver only antenna.
Subs use the same kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we're here in the level 3. About how far from the surface are we down here?
You're sitting about 50 feet underground right now.
And behind blast doors, multiple blast doors, and we're in a room that it's hung. What's the way you'd say that?
That's probably as good as any.
It's hanging on springs.
Yeah, correct. In fact, just a few minutes ago, Keith and I, he was like, really, we're hanging from the springs. And you can see the springs, but the idea of visualizing that you're not actually attached to the ground, that we're not, there's no solid ground that our feet are on. I actually moved it for him. So I actually put my back on it. We actually started pushing on it.
It's not attached to the walls at all. So you could physically move the entire room.
Yeah, and we did.
And how much do you think this we're 3 floors of hanging.
Yeah, we're it's about 3,000 square feet hanging, 18-inch I-beams. This thing's got to weigh 100,000 pounds, 150,000 pounds.
And you moved it with just one person pushing on it. It's kind of amazing. Lots of technology here. If you haven't been there, the Titan Museum, it's outside of Flagstaff.
Oh, no, it's outside of
Tucson, yeah. Great chance to go. I went with, maybe 10, 12 of us went down. And so if you're at WLPC in Phoenix in 2019, you might want to add a day and drive down. What, it take hour and a half, 2 hours down there or something?
Yeah, a couple hours down.
It was definitely worth the trip to go see how it was. And then while I'm here, I can visualize what each of the rooms were like in the real one. Right now, you've got it reconfigured. It's not a missile silo anymore. No missile, right? Where's the missile?
It's gone. It's been into space.
Yeah, it actually shot it?
Yeah, they repurposed the Titan IIs into Geminis. So a lot of them they used to put satellites up, and some of them were actually used for manned missions eventually.
So the silo itself is full?
So itself, they filled in. They blew off the top 25 feet. There's an inner silo where the missile is completely full of debris and gravel. There is what's called the outside area, which is called the silo equipment area, that we could technically get into if we were super motivated. We could have dug through some gravel and got into that. But you're talking about 150 feet deep. So even the pump alone to get that water out, you're talking about, probably a $5,000 pump just to move the water. And then what do you do? So
it's not that big of a room anyway.
That outside area it would add probably another 5,000-6,000 square feet, but it's not really all that usable unless you took out the silo. I mean, unless you just completely emptied it, then it would be incredible.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that's $1 million project.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I didn't win that lottery that we hit last night.
Oh yeah, somebody's got their $1 billion. Oh, even more. So we're on the 3rd level, and you've got this configured as what do you call this room? It from a training facility. This is the snack break room, but it's big.
Yeah, it's again, we're about 1,000 square feet on this floor. We have a kitchen installed. It's kind of multi-level in here. The ceilings are 13 feet high. So we actually kind of segmented it where there's a 4-foot deck effectively that's the kitchen, and then a semicircle of couches. We've got a 14-foot projection screen, 14,000 watt stereo system. It's basically the 12-year-old self of me would love this place, so it hasn't changed. I just got older and have more money.
There you go. And upstairs, up a flight of stairs to the level 2, where the training facility is going to be. Again, about 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, about 1,000 square feet. And we're going to have, one large projection screen, a couple large whiteboards, and then seating for probably up to 25, if I had to guess, if we wanted to make it, kind of go really deep with it. It can hold a number of people.
Yeah, it's a just so you can visualize it, it's a circle.
Yeah.
It's not a square room. It's a circular room, kind of octagonish, maybe. How many of those little? No,
it's actually that's interesting. So the concrete is a circle, but what was called the bird cage that we talked about, this hanging is, you're right. It's an octagon. It's got 8 sides to it. The floor again is a circle, but it's easier to build some things in straight lines. So it's an octagon.
And then above that, there's one more level that's a little smaller, but has a domed concrete roof.
Yeah, correct. So then you don't have the I-beam. It doesn't look as tough up there. But it's a domed concrete roof. That floor is about, at that bottom level, you're about 25 feet below ground at your feet. Top of the dome is about 13 feet below ground. And it's pretty interesting space. And one of the things we couldn't do, because I have so much stuff up there, Keith, is right in the middle of it has the worst or the best acoustics in the world, depending on your perspective. It is quite incredible. Because when you stand in the middle, everything reflects right back on you. It is so
you can hear yourself breathe.
You can, and if you stand across the room from somebody, you can whisper, and it's like they're in your ear. It's kind of interesting.
That's a unique room to play in. Well, let's go back and look at what is the history of this here. So what was this Titan missile silo used for originally?
Yeah, so this is a Titan II. So there's a Titan 1 and a Titan II. This is a Titan II, which was the way the Cold War worked is they were building missile systems and installing them, and they already had a design for the new one that was already being built, because it was just basically the nuclear arms race in the late 50s and early 60s. So there's Atlas E's, which are probably the most common for people turning into homes. Atlas E's they're terrible. They're not really shielded like this is. But it goes Atlas E, Atlas F, and then Titan 1, which is the largest missile facility that there is. They're not really all that well hardened, but they have 3 silos. They have a 100-foot dome room, but they only ever built 18 of those nationwide. But those were decommissioned within just a few years. The Titan 2, which came online on 54 sites in the U.S., came online in the 62. And they were only supposed to last 10 years. They actually lasted over 20 years into the mid-'80s when they were finally decommissioned.
So up to mid-'80s, they were launchable.
Correct. They were actively...
They're manned. People were in here all the time?
Yep. Yeah. 4 people would come in on 24-hour shifts called alerts, and they would be right where we're kind of sitting here. And, bad things happen. They're the ones here that are ready to turn the keys. And
how many are down here in Arkansas?
So there's 18 of them in Arkansas.
And they're specifically because they're by an Air Force base?
The story that I've heard is that their congressman lobbied because it brought in a lot of economic, growth, basically. Much concrete as you need for 18 of these. It employed a whole lot of men and women to get these built. So it has to be certain locations. So it has to be able to reach over the North Pole into Russia at the time. So Arkansas was fine. Arkansas, Arizona, and Kansas are the 3 locations for the Titan II.
We probably have congressmen in each of those districts to thank for that. So you bought the place, and after you bought it, it has it looked just like farmland.
Yeah, when we bought it, it was the gentleman we bought it from had attempted to open it. He dug down about 10, 15 feet. It was a really wet year, so there's a lot of water, and he was frustrated, so he sold it to us for $90,000, which, it's for 10 acres, so that's not really all that bad from a land value perspective. We bought that in 2010. And
so you have 8 years of playing with this.
Yes. I'm
assuming you learned all sorts of things, welding, excavator work, cutting I-beams out.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I grew up in a very rural area, so my dad was a welder and a machinist, so I got some of those skills and experience there, but definitely a lot of things I've learned. I'd never run an excavator, but now I feel like I'm okay proficient at it. Definitely use skills for welding and woodworking, but also things I'd never worked with, like pumps. Like, for example, just learning simple things like, head pressures at, the level that we're at. I mean, I have 120 PSI of water pressure down here. And, so you have to start taking into account a lot of interesting things when it comes to...
So we're deep here. What's the... I'm from Utah. We live in a desert. We don't have a lot of water. Our water table is like you don't even calculate it. What's the water table here?
Well, right now we've had a decent amount of rain, so it's about 5 feet.
And we're way below that. So how much water do you have to pump out of here to keep it dry?
We're fortunate that we don't have to pump any water out, actually. This is... knock on some wood here. It doesn't leak. The access portal leaks, so that's kind of before what's called unhardened space, so that's not protected, quote unquote. But this actual facility doesn't leak, at least not one that I've ever seen before.
So the area coming in leaks, but it wasn't designed to be hardened.
Correct, and that's something that we can solve and we're going to fix. But part of that you can also, I think, would attribute to the shielding that this thing has. It's not only made of concrete, but this is entirely clad in steel. So that was done for EMP protection, so electromagnetic
on the
pulse.
Outside or the inside of the concrete?
On the outside.
So I can see the concrete on the outside of this concrete. And how thick is it?
Depending on the location, between 4 and 8 feet thick.
Oh, so that wall there is...
That's probably a 4-foot wall. The floor below us is actually 8 feet thick, and the reason for it is that you have to make sure that you're not going to pop out of the ground. I don't know if anybody's if you ever Google it, people who have underground like propane tanks, when they start to empty, they will literally pop out of the ground if they don't have them anchored properly because they're buoyant.
So it's a big weight.
Right. Basically, it's a counterweight just to make sure it stays underground.
And then the whole thing is all clad in steel as well.
Yeah, correct. The outside of this entire facility, all the way through to the missile silo, is clad in steel.
So when those big blast doors are closed, you're in a big steel box inside of a big concrete box. all hung on a I-beam based bird cage.
Yeah. That's a good way to summarize it.
So you've bought it, spent a lot of time cleaning it up, getting it ready. You now have a website, TitanRanch.com, or coming website, and a name for it, Titan Ranch. What do you plan on doing with the facility?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I didn't think about business when I bought it, but as of probably the last year or so, it's like, hey, I want to be able to share it with people. But Titan Ranch, at least for the purposes of what we're talking about here, Keith, is really, I thought about turning it into a training facility. My original thoughts were like corporate experience, like imagine having a meeting down here. But as a former trainer, I did training for 6-7 years in Wi-Fi. I thought, hey, it'd be a cool place to hold training classes. And then through more thought, it's like, well, what about a training experience? So not only are you holding training in a missile silo, which is kind of cool in itself, both literally and figuratively, but it's also to do things that people don't normally get to do. Again, I've been fortunate that I've spent a lot of money in tools and fun things. So I've got the excavator and plasma cutters and welders. And, obviously it takes kind of maybe an eccentric guy to buy a missile silo and do what I've done. But I want to share that with people. And I think the idea of having a good learning experience from instructors like you, and then going all the way through to, taking a break at lunch, taking a couple hour break at lunch and like, hey, let's go do some axe throwing or skeet shooting, or let's build something, let's weld. I think that's kind of the vision that we have right now. Plus, we're talking about putting an escape room in one part of it, because who doesn't want to do an escape room in a nuclear missile silo? So lots of different options down here.
Well, you have a lot of space to do those things. And you're how far out of Conway?
Yeah, we're like 15 minutes away from a town that's, major town. It's got the Walmart, Sam's Clubs, Targets.
It's a real town. Yeah,
it's a real town.
I thought it was more rural, but we're a little rural out here where your silo is, but the town itself it's a regular town in America. Mm-hmm. I thought Arkansas was less than that. So I've had to change my view of the world. So what kind of activities the training's cool. I mean, you're inside of a missile silo. You have to get past the man trap with dual 6,000 pound blast doors. You can look down the, what's the tunnel over to the silo called?
Originally it's called a cableway, but yeah, it's a 120-foot long tunnel, 10 feet in diameter.
Connected where the workers worked over to physically where the
missile was stored. Yeah.
And so you can see that, and you enter in, and you're in a missile silo for a class. And I'm looking forward to be able to teach here. But those extra events, what made you think that those were things that other people wanted to do? First, I want to do them. So, right. So you have one person, but did you do any research to?
Yeah, you would think I would have. I think I just anecdotally from talking to people that people are like, wow, I wish I could do that. But I also just I really like giving people experiences. I think that it's fun for me to take people on tours here because they get to see something that they've never done. But also, I think it's also going to be good from a training perspective for people to do something that's very different, right? Learning ultra technical topics is great, but then let's use a different part of our brain. Let's use a creative part of our brain to, again, build something or learn a skill. But again, I think part of it is that people don't get a chance. You can't just go learn to weld, right? I mean, you could, but that's, quite a bit of effort. And there's a little bit of fear involved in some of these things, that people are afraid of sparks and things, but it's overcoming those fears, I think, are important, but then having a skill and after that is interesting.
No one's going to spend a couple hours and feel like, oh, I'm a welder, but you've done welding and all this, and you don't feel like it's that scary thing anymore. Now, you're probably not very good at it.
No, it's not expected to be. But if someone, at the end, they're like, hey, this is interesting. I'm going to go spend $200 and go get myself a little welder and do some hobby stuff. That's great. I mean, that's good. It overcame that fear and gave someone an interest in something that they maybe not would have before.
Yeah. What are some of the other, so welding's one activity. What other kind of things would you do around welding? I mean, just welding two pieces of metal together.
Yeah. I mean, there's plasma cutting, which just sounds cool. But
just the plasma word.
Just the word plasma sounds cool. But it's really cool to be able to cut precise holes in steel. I mean, you're talking about temperatures that far exceed the surface of the sun to instantly, create a molten metal puddle that's going to, blasting a hole through. So that's just really cool stuff.
That's the fear.
That's the fear, right? But
Yeah.
that is the fear. But then it's, my kids have done it because I said, hey, put the safety equipment on, but then do it. And, kids young have no fear. And
They
so
just
we're
do
gonna,
it, yeah.
So when you come here, you're going to overcome those fears or that anxiety. But again, I think what a good thing would be was someone get to take something home, right? Let's write your name with a welder. Let's, build something small. Let's build something and then test how strong it is. So, you can put some kind of value to your
little
quality.
stress test. I put these two pieces of metal together, and it's either stronger or weaker than what the metal was before, and let's find out.
Yeah, and it's okay if it's weaker to start with. But, my idea here is that it's not me teaching all of this, is that I want, I know local experts for all of this, whether it's, skeet shooting or, again, welding, is that this isn't, taught by just some random redneck guy with a missile silo. It's actually taught by professionals that have experience in this and, kind of give that good experience.
Axe throwing.
Axe throwing, that may be taught by me. I have a natural, maybe my next career.
Or maybe have your daughter come do it.
Yeah, she's great.
I mean, that's another one of those experiential things. A lot of corporate people go through, like the escape room. Oh, let's have a little bonding experience with people. And so in a classroom, we would have the students would get together and spend some time and go throw some axes.
Yeah, and per your suggestion, Keith, what I think is great, you do it at lunch, right? So you take a little bit longer of lunch. It's still nice outside, and you go do something to break up that class. I mean, no matter how entertaining an instructor is, it's always really good to get some fresh air and do something a little bit different, and then settle back in and learn again. Yeah, and axe throwing is fun. It's a lot safer than it sounds. It sounds kind of scary, but
it's not like lawn bowling where you stay on your end of the thing. They all go in one direction.
Right, correct. Yeah. There's nobody on the receiving end of the axes. So that's,
when I was a kid, I thought lawn darts were that way. So we got told by parents that no, you're supposed to do it one way.
Yeah,
it's a lot more fun to be on the other end.
Yes, there's a reason those are banned now.
Oh man, no wonder I can't find any. So what other kind of things do you plan on doing with the silo here?
Well, I think that the idea is to again, different experiences, but I think as crazy as corporate meetings, again, add those experiences to it. Truth is, I think people want to get married here. I know it's weird, but Keith, you came down that cableway. Imagine, maybe a little bit of an eccentric couple that the bride comes down the cableway and, to her friends and family and, hey, they got married in a missile silo. I don't know anybody that has.
There are people who would get married in all sorts of things.
Yeah. Airbnb, we talked about doing, we have what will be a beautiful master bed and bath. That sounds a little antithesis of a missile silo, but a beautiful, master bed and bath. And, again, we're down here in kind of the living and kitchen area, which I think will be really nice when we get done. And yeah, maybe people spend the night and said, hey, I spent the night in a missile silo.
You can go to the missile silo is there any other museums other than the one in Tucson?
Not that I think there may be, but definitely not to the extent of the Titan II.
Yeah, and the Titan II, and you just got to go because you see it exactly as it was back 40 years ago. Yeah, and you can even turn the key.
Yeah,
it doesn't do anything, but
fortunately,
yeah. And they have a missile, obviously not. Well, the missile's real.
It's a real missile. It's the one they actually used for training. So when they were sending people through tech school to work on the missile, it's actually the original missile they used at the Air Force Base for training.
Oh, is that where that?
Yeah, that's where they got it.
Didn't know that.
So it was never been fueled. That was kind of the big thing.
Never fueled and no warhead.
No warhead.
But it looks good there. So recommend that. So next time you're at WLPC, just take a day and head down a little south and go see that silo along the way. Well, what's up next for GT? You're now currently, you started your career with being a Microsoft trainer.
Oh, yeah, that was way back when. Yeah,
transitioned into wireless, went into marketing, and now you're with Nianza. Now, am I supposed to say Nianza or Nianza?
Technically, it's Nianza, I think. Oh. That's what people tell me, but it's, that's why when you can't pronounce the name of a company, you know that you probably should have named it something different. But yeah, no, what's in the future for me is I don't know. I've been at Nianza 3 years. Great company. We have massive momentum. So it's still, it's always fun winning. So that's always good, but always looking, hoping to learn more and kind of see where things take me.
Well, good. Well, we plan on using your Titan Ranch as a training facility. I'm impressed with what you have here, and looking forward to scheduling some classes in 2019 to come back here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, and we talk about a lot of other great instructors coming down here as well, and I'm excited about the prospect of doing that for sure.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
10 Talks.
Again, my name is Steve Leytus. Company is Nuts About Nets, and we develop diagnostic software to troubleshoot wireless networks. We're also the primary distributor for ARF Explorer handheld spectrum analyzers. I don't know how many of you are familiar with those, but they're pretty popular these days. And so our focus, we're a software company, and our focus is primarily Wi-Fi. And also we play an important role. We create software for wireless pro audio field. And it turns out that in wireless pro audio, what I mean, these are ARF engineers, sound engineers. They set up, dozens of transmitters for a live event. And each transmitter has to be assigned a frequency or a channel. And it turns out that they run into the same problems that we run into, similar problems we run into in setting up a Wi-Fi network. So it's a good space for us. And so as a company, our goals are in Wi-Fi is to compute the best channel. And what that often means is the channel that has the potential for the most throughput. And in the wireless pro audio field, the software performs something called intermodulation analysis, which is important when you do frequency coordination, when you have dozens of transmitters and each one has to have a separate frequency, and you want to make sure that they don't clobber one another. So in this talk, what I wanted to tell you about is a new diagnostic tool that we released last summer. It's called WiFiMetrix. It uses a dual band Wi-Fi chip, and it performs two important features. One of them is called air horn, and air horn is a packet injector, or you can also think of it as a signal generator. It's a source of RF. And the other important feature is Wi-Fi probe. And Wi-Fi probe is more interesting to me. Wi-Fi probe implements a new metric that allows you to determine the quality of a channel. And in the course of doing that, we can compute the best channel. And in a moment, I'll be a little bit more clear what I mean by that. And so WiFiMetrix, it's a handheld diagnostic tool. It doesn't require associating with an access point. It can be used standalone. And the way that I describe it to people is it basically sees the world through the eyes of an 802.11 device. It's not a spectrum analyzer. It's not a Wi-Fi scanner. It's a Wi-Fi chip that we've added some diagnostic software so that it can do diagnostics. It'll see the world and do diagnostics the way that an access point would. Over the course of listening to the talks the last couple of days, I come from a different world. I'm a software developer, but I realize that most of you guys here are enterprise installers. So I was trying to think about how do I put WiFiMetrix in a context so that it would make it easier for you to consider whether WiFiMetrix would fit in your toolbox. And so one of the things I just want to be clear about, like what WiFiMetrix is and what it's not. So WiFiMetrix, it's not an enterprise tool. It's not a tool that you would use when you're designing a Wi-Fi installation. And it doesn't implement any sophisticated software that you can do. You can compute wave propagation or power requirements or network analysis or stuff like that. But what WiFiMetrix is, it's a tool that we use to troubleshoot Wi-Fi networks. It's used for testing. Even though it's not an enterprise tool, it can be used to gather information in preparation for an enterprise installation. It's simple to use, and also importantly, it's very low cost. And it implements these two main features: air horn, which is a channel signal generator, and Wi-Fi probe, that we refer to it as a channel analyzer, that it actually measures. There's a metric called, the metric is percent available transmit time, and it can compute that metric for each channel. And that metric reflects the quality of a channel. So we're not really we're not determining, how good the hardware is. We want to know the relative quality of each channel, and to actually perhaps rank each channel, so you know what is the best. So if you have a choice of which channel to use, you have another data point that you can use in determining, which channel you want to configure the access point for. So a number of years ago, a fellow named Devin Aiken coined an expression that we stole, and his expression was, wouldn't it be nice if there were tools that use the infrastructure to troubleshoot the infrastructure? So whenever I talk about WiFiMetrix, I like using, I think that's a good description. It's an 802.11 device that's used to troubleshoot 802.11 networks. And what I often like using referring to the OSI model when I think about, it helps me think about how different tools fit into the scheme of troubleshooting. And in particular, I really love RF spectrum analyzers. I use them a lot, we sell them. But RF spectrum analysis operates at layer 1. And the point of this slide is to emphasize that in the OSI model, that each layer is clueless about the layer above it. So as great as RF spectrum analysis is and how we all use it, actually when you take that data and you're trying to make decisions about what's the best channel, you're really sort of, unless you're intimately familiar with the 802.11 standard, you're really just guessing. And even if you guess right, it's hard to quantify. Even if you guess that one channel is better than another, it's hard to quantify how much better and whether it's actually worth switching to another channel. And just to contrast that with WiFiMetrix, it's a layer 2 device because it actually uses an 802.11 chip to do the diagnostics. And so that's the important distinction. We're using an 802.11 device to obtain a metric about 802.11. We're not using spectrum analysis to deduce what we think might be going on at the layer above it. And so here's an example. This upper chart is a spectrum trace. It's an artificial one, but so I have 3 patterns. I have 3 medium height peaks over channel 1, a broad lower peak over channel 6, and a tall narrow peak over channel 11. So suppose if you were given an exam, who would say channel 1 is the best channel? Channel 6. Channel 11. Who doesn't care because you're using 5 gigahertz? Okay. So the point is that this is sort of a rhetorical question because nobody. It's hard. It's basically impossible to tell which would be the best channel, but and that's because it's a spectrum trace. It's collecting data from layer 1, and to contrast that again, Wi-Fi probe, the way that we display the data in the device is that it traverses every channel and it actually computes a metric that can then be used to determine which is the best channel. Because it's a layer 2 device. A little bit more about Wi-Fi probe, the Wi-Fi probe feature. So again, it's a standalone device. It does not associate with an access point. It performs what we call channel analysis using IMMI technology. IMMI stands for Indirect Measurement of Microwave Interference. It's a patented technology that uses a dual-band Wi-Fi chip. And the technology relies on CCA. The Wi-Fi probe feature traverses each channel, and it computes the metric percent available transmit time for each channel. So it's based on CCA. The air horn feature, air horn, again, it's a packet injector signal generator. It operates in 3 modes. The charts up here show the pattern that you can generate in the 3 modes. I've listed some of the applications, testing antennas, aligning directional antennas, locating dead spots. You can also use it to create trouble for your friends, but I know nobody here would use it for that purpose. And finally, 2 new features that we're adding. One is Wi-Fi throughput, testing Wi-Fi throughput, and the other one is DFS testing with Wi-Fi throughput. The way this is used is the WiFiMetrix device can be configured to be an access point, and so you would set it close to where your access point is or where you imagine it's going to be. And then we have a smartphone app that associates with the access point, and it displays a graphic, and the way you set it up is that either the access point transmits and the smartphone receives, or the other way around. And basically, it's like iPerf. And so what you do, you walk around, and the expectation is that the throughput for the 2 devices should closely track with one another, unless maybe you're walking around and you walk into an area where there's RF interference or there's a dead spot, and then the two charts would begin to diverge. And the other feature is very interesting. It's new to us. We're adding another radio for DFS testing, and the idea is that this would allow users to confirm whether the access point that they've installed really this radio, what it'll do, it'll simulate a radar signal. And the way that it would be used is that you want to see if it triggers the access point to jump from a DFS channel to another channel. And I'm over. So I think I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @WirelessLANPros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter @KeithRParsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.